Pontiac mother charged with child abuse and abandoning her children was back in court today after being charged with 3 counts of first-degree child abuse. Prosecutors have now also charged Kelly Bryant with 4 counts of welfare fraud.
Today, a judge issued a personal bond of more than $29,000 on the welfare fraud charges. Now, the amount issued is the exact amount that she's accused of defrauding the Welfare Benefits Office. Meanwhile, the mother is still being held on first-degree child abuse charges. And joining us now to discuss the latest developments is defense attorney Lane Sacqua. Thanks so much for joining us, Lane.
Thank you. Good evening.
So there appears to be a mountain of evidence in this case. What challenges do her defense attorneys have in defending her?
Well, in this case, I believe they said there were over 600 pages of discovery, including videos. So that's a lot of discovery. So to go through all the pictures and to hear the depictions of going into the house, we've heard about the destruction all over the home, the grave conditions that they were living in. So the old saying, a picture paints 1,000 words, that would be the greatest obstacle that the defense attorney has in this case.
Yeah, and when it comes to defending a client, sometimes there are cases where you go into it thinking, how do you even possibly try to defend them? And in a case like this, what could they lean on?
Well, I think that every case has elements, correct? We have jury instructions that we go by. And if you look at the jury instructions, in this one, there isn't necessarily physical harm, but is it the mental harm? And how do we lean in on the mental harm? Was there mental harm based on where they were? Mood changes, ordinary course of living for the children. And I think that's where the elements are going to lie in the trial. And you have to kind of look at what were the children's behaviors, what have the children said, and hone in on that to see if there's an issue with those elements. So you've got to look at the elements and address it from there.
And in terms of defending Kelly Bryant, do you think her attorneys will lean in on her mental health, maybe what led up to this? But then on the flip side, can that be argued since she's accused of defrauding the system at the same time?
It is definitely a catch-22 on that. You have both cases. But I think that in the state of Michigan, you have to look at mental health no matter what. You have the ability to get a competency hearing. We don't know whether or not her attorney will request that. It doesn't look like they have done that this far as we've adjourned the probable cause conference, but it's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, and this is one of those cases, too, where it's made national headlines. And a lot of people were really disgusted by what we saw, understandably so. How much do you think public opinion could play into the decisions that are made?
Having practiced over 20 years in that court and having a lot of unfortunate public cases in the past couple of years in that court and what we've seen in national news, I don't really see either the prosecutor nor the defense attorney nor the judges for that matter, whether it be at the district court level or at the circuit court level, really letting publicity play a part in their decisions. If it goes to trial, obviously we have to ask fellow jurors, it could be you or me, what we feel, what we've seen, if we're predisposed by that. But I think you have the ability to get an impartial jury on that if you go to trial. And I think the prosecutor and the defense attorney and the judge, for that matter, will be impartial as well.
And Bryant was initially given $250 million bond, which has been drastically reduced to just tens of thousands. Why that decision?
Well, in Michigan, a few years ago, we did the Justice Reform Act, where we looked at bond and what was fair and what was reasonable, and there were certain factors that were set forward. And upon reviewing the factors that the Justice Reform Act had, there was the ability to reduce that from $250 million to $50,000. She has no criminal history. There's conditions set in place that she can't speak to the children or anyone involved in the case, put her on a tether. We shouldn't ruin someone's life over bond was kind of the Justice Reform Act. If they're going to come to court.
Yeah, and speaking of no contact orders, we know that she did allegedly violate that, trying to reach out and having other people doing so too. With that also coming to play in terms of everything that's already happening with this case, is it looking kind of bad for this client possibly?
I don't necessarily know if we can say it's looking bad. I mean, again, the pictures are horrific. We know that. But I think, as everyone may or may not know, the jail calls are recorded. So whether or not they have evidentiary value, we will know what was actually said. Who did she call? Did she specifically call the children? Did she not? The judge only suspended her jail privileges for 1 week, which makes me believe that it wasn't that egregious or her jail privileges would be completely yanked. But I think maybe we will see those as the case progresses in the future.
Well, defense attorney Lane Sacqua, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.